find inside isn't actually the monster you've imagined. It's something far more unsettling than that. Before we go deeper into this, do me a favor. If you've ever felt this strange resistance to truly knowing yourself, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because we're about to uncover truths that most people never want to face. Trust me, you'll want to remember where you heard this. Let's start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you sat alone with your thoughts? No phone, no music, no distractions. Just you and the endless conversation happening inside your head. If you're like most people, you can't remember, and there's a reason you avoid it. We've become masters of distraction, experts at filling every gap in our day with something, anything, to keep us from that terrifying encounter with ourselves. But why? What are we really afraid of finding? Most people will tell you they're afraid of discovering they're broken, damaged, or fundamentally flawed. They're scared they'll find darkness, selfishness, or terrible truths about who they really are. But after years of studying human psychology and watching people finally brave this journey inward, I've learned something surprising. That's not what scares us most. The real fear is much stranger and much more profound. The truth is, we're not afraid of finding a monster inside. We're afraid of finding a stranger, someone we don't recognize. Someone whose dreams we've buried, whose voice we've silenced, whose potential we've ignored for so long that they've become unrecognizable. We're afraid of finding the person we were supposed to become before life, society, and fear convinced us to be someone safer, smaller, more acceptable. Think about it. When you were a child, you had these wild, unfiltered dreams. You knew exactly what made you come alive, what fascinated you, what you wanted to explore. But then, something happened. You learned to edit yourself, to fit in, to meet expectations. Every time someone laughed at your dreams, every time you were told to be practical, every time you chose safety over authenticity, you buried a piece of that original person. Layer after layer, year after year, until the real you became a stranger living beneath the surface of the acceptable you. And now the thought of excavating all those layers feels overwhelming. Because what if you find someone you don't know how to be anymore? What if the person you were meant to be requires a life completely different from the one you've built? What if knowing yourself means having to change everything? That's the real fear. Not darkness, but disruption. Not evil, but evolution. Not finding something terrible, but finding something true that demands you live differently. Here's what happens when people finally stop running and face themselves. At first, there's this moment of vertigo. It's like you've been wearing someone else's clothes for so long that seeing yourself naked feels foreign. You start noticing the contradictions. The ways you say you value one thing, but spend your time on another. The dreams you claim don't matter anymore, but still whisper to you at night. The person you pretend to be in public versus who you are when no one's watching. And this part is uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, because you start seeing all the lies you've told yourself to make your choices acceptable. The rationalizations, the excuses, the ways you've dimmed your own light to make others comfortable. You see how you've betrayed yourself in 1,000 small ways, trading authenticity for approval, passion for security, truth for peace. But here's where it gets interesting. If you push through that discomfort instead of running back to distraction, something shifts. You start finding pieces of yourself you'd forgotten existed. That curiosity you had about astronomy, that way you used to write stories just for the joy of it, that fearlessness you had before you learned that failure was something to be ashamed of. These fragments of your authentic self start surfacing, and suddenly you realize something profound. You're not discovering a stranger. You're remembering a friend you abandoned. The person you're afraid to find isn't some dark, terrible version of yourself. It's the vibrant, unedited, fully alive version that you sacrificed for safety. The one who asks difficult questions. The one who wants more than you've allowed yourself to want. The one who knows, deep down, that you're capable of so much more than you're currently settling for. And this is exactly why the fear is so intense. Because once you know that person is there, once you remember who you really are, You can't unknow it. You can't go back to comfortable numbness. You can't pretend anymore that the life you've built by default is the life you actually want. Self-discovery isn't just about finding yourself. It's about facing the responsibility of becoming yourself. Let me tell you what happened to Sarah. For 15 years, she worked in corporate finance, good salary, prestigious title, all the markers of success. But she had this habit of avoiding mirrors, of never quite looking herself in the eye. She filled every moment with productivity, podcasts, plans, anything, to avoid the quiet. Then, during a random weekend alone when her family was away, she ran out of distractions, and in that silence, something cracked open. She realized she hadn't chosen her career. She'd inherited expectations and never questioned them. She realized the person she pretended to be at work, the efficient, ambitious, strategic thinker, that wasn't her. That was a character she'd created to survive. The real her, the one she'd buried 15 years ago, wanted to teach, to work with her hands, to create things that mattered more than quarterly profits. The discovery terrified her, because now she knew, and knowing meant she had to choose. Keep living the lie, or risk everything to become real. That's the moment we all fear most, not the discovery itself, but what comes after. Because self-discovery isn't a destination, it's a demolition. It's tearing down the false structures you've built and having the courage to construct something true, even when you don't know if it will stand. If you're still watching, drop a comment below and tell me this. What's one thing you know about yourself that you've been afraid to act on? Don't overthink it. Just type the first thing that comes to mind. Sometimes, naming the truth is the first step to living it. Here's what most people don't understand about the fear of self-discovery. It's not actually about what you'll find, it's about what you'll have to do once you find it. Because true self-knowledge demands change. It demands alignment between who you are and how you live. And change, even positive change, feels like death to the person you've been. This is why people choose distraction over discovery. Why we'd rather scroll endlessly through other people's lives than examine our own. Why we fill our calendars so completely, there's no space left for introspection. We're not avoiding darkness, we're avoiding disruption. We're protecting the familiar, even when the familiar is slowly killing our spirit. But here's the thing about avoiding yourself. You can run, but you can't hide. Not really, because that authentic self, the one you're so afraid to meet, doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It shows up in your restlessness, in your unexplained sadness, in that persistent feeling that something's missing even when you have everything you thought you wanted. It shows up in your envy of people who seem more alive, more certain, more themselves. It shows up in that voice at 3 in the morning, asking if this is really all there is. You can spend decades running from self-discovery, but you'll never outrun yourself. The question isn't whether you'll eventually face who you really are. The question is how much of your life you'll waste before you do. Now, let's talk about what actually happens when you stop running. When you finally sit down with yourself and ask the hard questions. Who am I without my roles, my achievements, my relationships? What do I actually want? Not what I've been taught to want. What lights me up? What breaks my heart? What would I do if I weren't afraid? At first, you might not have answers. You've spent so long performing, conforming, adapting, that you've lost touch with your own internal compass. And this feels frustrating, even scary. We expect self-discovery to be this dramatic revelation, this lightning bolt moment where suddenly everything makes sense. But real self-discovery is quieter than that. It's more like excavation than explosion. You dig gently, carefully, patiently, removing layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear, until slowly, gradually, your true shape begins to emerge. And here's what you find. You're not one thing. You're not just light or just shadow. You're complex, contradictory, constantly evolving. You contain multitudes. You're capable of both tremendous courage and paralyzing fear, profound wisdom and absolute foolishness, selfless love and petty jealousy. And all of it is you. The real you. Not the sanitized version you present to the world, but the full, messy, beautiful, complicated human being you actually are. This is what we're really afraid of. Not finding something terrible, but finding something real. Because real is vulnerable. Real is unpredictable. Real requires you to show up as you are, not as you think you should be. And in a world that profits from your insecurity, that constantly tells you you're not enough as you are, being real is an act of rebellion. But it's also liberation. Because once you know yourself, truly know yourself, other people's opinions lose their power. You stop needing external validation because you have internal certainty. You stop comparing yourself because you understand you're on your own unique path. You stop performing because you're too busy living. The people who've done this work, who've braved the journey inward and emerged knowing themselves, they're different. You can see it in their eyes. There's a clarity there, a groundedness. They're less reactive, less defensive. They know who they are, so they don't need to prove it. They know what they want, so they're not easily swayed. They've faced their shadows, so they're not afraid of yours. This is the irony of self-discovery. The thing we fear most, knowing ourselves, is actually the thing that sets us free. Free from the exhausting performance of being who we think we should be. Free from the constant anxiety of wondering if we're enough. Free from living someone else's definition of success. Free to simply be, fully and unapologetically, ourselves. So what's stopping you? What's really stopping you from that deep dive into your own depths? Is it fear of what you'll find? Or is it fear of what you'll have to do once you find it? Are you afraid of discovering you're broken? Or are you afraid of discovering you're capable of so much more than you're currently allowing yourself to be? Because here's the truth no one tells you. The journey of self-discovery isn't about finding yourself. You're not lost. You're buried. Under expectations, obligations, other people's dreams for you, your own fear of being too much or not enough. The work isn't discovery, it's excavation, it's archaeology of the soul. And yes, it's messy and uncomfortable and sometimes painful, but it's also the most important work you'll ever do. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the risks you took to become yourself. You'll regret the years you spent being someone you weren't. You'll regret the dreams you dismissed, the voice you silenced, the person you could have been if only you'd been brave enough to look. So if this resonated with you, if something in you recognized this truth, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because the most powerful thing we can do for each other is give permission to be real. And maybe, just maybe, your share will be the thing that gives someone else the courage to finally stop running and start discovering who they really are. The fear of self-discovery is universal, but so is the freedom on the other side of it. You just have to be brave enough to look. The stranger you're afraid to meet, that's not a stranger at all. That's you, waiting patiently for you to finally come home.